Hello, welcome back to another video by me. Today because I don't really, but I don't want to upset my French viewers. So, France is going to be forming an empire. I know. I just did a video of them getting squashed by their neighbors. So, and just getting completely destroyed. So, yeah. France and all of its random overseas territories, they still like to claim because they want to feel like they have an empire, right? Doesn't everybody? Oh, and Reunion and Mayotte. It's just Comoros. Don't listen to the French propaganda. It's just Comoros. Yeah. So France is going to be forming an empire. Let's see how this is going to go. So, of course, the first country they're going to attack is Tunisia. Little old Tunisia. I don't know what they've ever done to deserve this. But yeah, French naval forces are the ones that are in the north, right? They'll keep a little bit, maybe like a sixth of their army, because they're not expecting attack from the UK, or maybe. So yeah, most of them though are going to leave from like Saint Malo and Le Havre and Calais and Nantes and Bordeaux and whatever. They're all going to leave though. They're going to go around. They're going to squeeze through the Strait of Gibraltar in like a massive line, and everyone's like, "What are you doing? Why are you going through here?" And Spain's like, "Okay, I'll let you go through because we're allies, right? Okay." So anyway, most of the French naval forces down here head straight to Corsica. And then from Corsica, they launch an invasion which goes through Italy. And then they start to navally bombard the coast of Tunisia. Tunisia, in this map, they have more in real life, but only has two major cities, Gabes and Tunis. So yeah, this is not looking good. French naval forces will make a landing right outside Tunis. They also made one right outside Gabes. And Sfax is over here as well. So then they capture Sfax and Sousse. It's not looking good though for Tunisia. French forces are completely overwhelming them. The whole north is separated from the south. The south has got much less of a chance. So after French forces capture a lot and Gabes, the south will surrender and any remaining forces will flee into Libya or Algeria to set up in exile. French forces will have a harder time entering into Tunis, but they will, of course, capture the city eventually. And our first country has been annexed by the nasty French, the frog eaters. So yeah, they've joined. This is a sad day for the world. It really is. Okay. So yeah, it's gone. I'm so sorry for this, Tunisia. We didn't want it to end like that. But you were an old colony, so it was always going to end like that. Sorry. We'll give you an empire one day. Don't you worry. I don't know how, but it's okay. So yeah, they have lost their capital city. And instead, it will just be another major city right here. Now, we go down to back to the background. France is going to move their main target over to West Africa, and they're going to declare war on Ivory Coast, Guinea, and Senegal. No, it's 3. So French naval forces will come down the coast. Oh, and also Mauritania, yeah. French naval forces will come down the coast, and they will start to navally bombard all these countries, and it's clear what they're going to do. They're going to send 2 forces to make the bigger force down here, and these 2 because they're more of a threat, and then a smaller force up here to Mauritania and Senegal. So the first naval force will land outside of Nouakchott, and they'll capture it very easily. They'll capture any other major settlements on the coast of Mauritania. This is basically where there are only 3 million people live. And then the whole country surrenders. Just like that. Done. French forces continue to spill over into Senegal. However, Senegal had time to set up some fortifications. They're not very strong, but it's just enough. So then they'll set up a defensive background, waiting for the rest of the troops in to make it a lot easier so they didn't have to just charge through. Another battalion lands down here right next to Liberia. They rapidly advance to Ivory Coast. However, they face it's much harder than in Mauritania and Senegal. They push over here and they declare war on Sierra Leone. I think it might be an English colony, but I don't know. England's like, hey, I don't like that. They're our colony, not yours. But French, and also they declare war on Liberia. And it's like, hey, that's even more of a no. So yeah, French forces do this to basically so they don't have to go around. They completely capitulate the two countries after both capitals are captured really easily. And then they start to push into Guinea, but thankfully the capital's right on the border, so they can just, boom, they capture all the coastline, and after splitting the country a few times in half, they surrender. French forces now resume their attack into Senegal. They push Dakar into a battle and siege, and they capture it. After a few more weeks of fighting, another French naval landing down here to capture any more settlements. And after they reach the Gambia River, Senegal surrenders. French forces enter into Yamoussoukro in Ivory Coast. They also push along the coast and they land and capture Abidjan. Ivory Coast has got more cities though, so when they lose their capital, they continue on fighting for a few weeks. Forces continue to advance. They push the country into two though, and eventually everybody surrenders down here. I think we know what's going to happen. All of them are annexed completely by the French in a peace treaty. Quite extreme, but they want their colonies back, right? So here we go. It's a French Empire video. The French get what they don't deserve back. So yeah, this is not good. The world is greatly condemning this, but they're not going to do anything just yet, because I said so. Right. So now, French forces, after they will completely eradicate the capitals. Why is this nail not working? They will get rid of all these capitals here. Yep, like here, like so. And they will all become part of alright, let me pause. Here we are. Now the French have completely eradicated all the capitals. They still have their major cities there, but let's just imagine. French forces are going to move back to Europe now. And the next target on the chopping block is going to be none other than the little old country of Belgium. And Luxembourg, because why not? So French forces rapidly advance into Belgium, however they're much stronger. Luxembourg just doesn't exist anymore. They'll push and capture Wallonia very quickly. However, they have more trouble in Flanders, with the Dutch even joining in to support them. And the Dutch and the Wallonians are receiving support from all their neighbours, because they don't exactly want war yet. However, the Dutch are feeling a bit bored. They like being invaded. So they wanted to support them, which actually does help push back the French out of Brussels completely and back into Wallonia. However, once the French send their full forces back from Africa, Belgium falls, Amsterdam falls, and yes, welcome to the French Empire. The Empire of the France. So, peace treaty here. Belgium, goodbye. Luxembourg, also goodbye. Some southern parts of the Netherlands, also goodbye. France basically just makes like a line here. Understandable. They take all this land from the Dutch, and they make the Dutch into a little puppet. They are still an independent country, but their leader is French, so maybe not so independent. Brussels is not the capital anymore. It's been placed here. Same with these two. They just have major cities here, 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 and also here. There you go. Yep. So nice. Oh, and also, yeah. So then the Dutch are turned into a puppet state, shown here. They still exist. So now the world is starting to condemn them a bit more, a bit seriously. And just before they do so, instead of invading like a sovereign major European country, which, let's be real, the world's more likely to care about Belgium than Mauritania. Sorry, but it's true. They declare war on all of Indochina. And the world's like, first of all, hey, that's 3 countries now. And they're all big countries, especially Vietnam. And then also the world's like, especially America, they're like, and China, you sure you want to do that? Remember last time you did this? Anyway, French forces cross the whole Pacific until they reach Vietnam, and they land in the south. And they capture Cà Mau pretty quickly. Vietnam is probably strong though. And then they push down south, and the Battle of Ho Chi Minh begins, but this is very difficult for the French. However, they have more success in Cambodia, capturing Pria Sihanouk and the whole coastline. They push in and capture Phnom Penh. However, Vietnamese reinforcements are able to push back and capture half of the capital and prevent the French from fully capturing Siem Reap. However, French forces go around the flanking forces, and they make multiple naval landings on the coast with an aim to stop supply routes. And this time they can't go through Laos, they have to go through Thailand. And Thailand has got a bunch of military on its borders, and it's like, we are not getting invaded. We don't want that. We don't want America, just like America, to bomb us like what happened to Laos. But yeah, French forces land right here, and they are successful in completely cutting combine the 3 countries in half. They also make another landing over here to stop supply routes into Vietnam. This is successful. And the Battle of Ho Chi Minh intensifies as it's now completely cut off. Phnom Penh falls though. And remember, this is happening over a few months or a year. This is not like a couple weeks, like, for example, some of the African countries would be. But yeah, so French forces continue to push up the coast. Vietnamese forces, along with help from China and volunteer forces, are able to push out and capture this northern one. However, they're not so lucky with the south. They're able to push down to this little bay, but that's about it. And they're able to fully liberate Laos. Yay. However, French forces capture Ho Chi Minh, and this is not good. French forces now create another opportunity over here. They land in Tan Hoa, and they capture the city. Really not good for Vietnam, as this now provides them with an opportunity right on their borders. And the forces enter into Laos, and they get really close to their city, capital city. They cut them in half this time, and it's more successful as French forces slowly make their way up the coast. They push into Laos as it's easier to get into Laos, and they get something like this. French forces near and capture Luang Prabang. They also cut off Vientiane, which falls really easily, which leads to the surrender of Laos. They also push in, and with support from the West, are able to, especially America, able to get rid of Hue. Their excuse for this is, first of all, territorial reclamation and removal of communist influence. So yeah, Hanoi falls, and yep, this is not a good day for the world. French forces are going to be really greedy, and they're going to capture the whole thing. Actually, what they're going to do is they're going to make this into a puppet state. So let's do that again. Just like the Dutch. So we have a new puppet state. But they are this is basically like a colony, this one. It's more of a colony than the Dutch. I mean, you can argue that both of them are a colony, really. But yeah, so French Indochina is back. And we're going to keep all 3 capital cities because I'd say it's probably split up. Anyway, enough with that. Nobody cares about French Indochina. Now, we go back to West Africa as France is on the roll again. However, this is probably a few years later because they don't want to get jumped. I always forget which one's which. How about both of them, Okay. So, who else was French? French. Yeah, that's French. It's all French. So they capture and invade all of these countries. It's a lot, right? But forces who are left over here rapidly enter into Mali. They don't do very much in the north, but I know this is all... Wait. This is all empty. This is just a bunch of Berber desert people. Or Tuareg or whatever. But the actual... There's quite a few cities in this region. Timbuktu, Gao, whatever. And then they've got Bamako, of course. Very similar for most of these countries, actually. Especially Chad, it's almost the exact same. Yeah, French forces completely capture Bamako really quickly. And Mali's got no chance. They capture Gao and Timbuktu. They reach the border and, yeah, they're gone. Mali's gone. Forces enter into Burkina Faso, capture Ouagadougou. And they also land and they capture both the capital, Benin and Togo. They slowly push up Benin and Togo. And then they start to reach them. And, yeah, it's not good. French forces also cross the border from all sides in an attempt to capture Niamey, which they do. It's not very good. And after sending a few spearheads to capture any other major settlements over here in the desert, it's not really that many, but just if any. Niger falls. Whoa, no. So yeah. Now, French forces from over here, the western regions from like Mali, most of them are in here into Chad, but they start an invasion into Chad. The north's not really that important, so they send a small flanking troop to cut the north in half, and some troops, a very, very small amount, like 15,000, are able to completely occupy the north just so it doesn't rebel and creates insurgencies. Forces down here, though, enter into Gabon and the Republic of the Congo. And they start their own invasion, something like this. Forces push in around Libreville and they capture the city. This leads to Gabon's surrender. Like that. Forces continue to advance from all sides, though, into the Congo. And Brazzaville falls, so they surrender. Very nice. They also enter... Why did they not have a... Why did these guys not have a capital? I'm really confused. Yeah, forces enter around to capture Yaoundé. And Cameroon surrenders. Forces push into Central African Republic, capture Bangui, and guess what? They surrender. They also enter into N'Djamena, and guess what? They also surrender. Greedy French. They annex the entire thing. Yeah, they don't even make a colony. Told you about these French. Always being greedy, make them big French again. This goes back to old colonial days. All rebellions are suppressed. Blah, 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 blah. Keeping the capitals because they are just the administrative regions. The capitals, because I'm sure that they'd just be divided into countries, but they wouldn't be real countries like in real life. Like, maybe it might be like Aruba and Curacao, though, in terms of like they have their own flag and whatnot. But yeah, so we got something like this. We've got all of this land, though. And now the French are absolutely massive again. Woohoo! So the French are going to spend maybe another 15 years just building up, assimilating, making sure everybody's speaking French. And then it's time. French declare war on Morocco, Algeria. French declare war on Spain and Italy. And the world is like, whoa, okay. Now we understand why I haven't done anything for so long. French launched a massive invasion of all these. And you know what? For funsies, they declare war on Libya as well. And, you know, put Western Sahara in there. They also get the Canaries, right? And the Azores and Madeira. And they also declare war on Cape Verde, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Ghana, and Equatorial Guinea, and Sao Tome. Like so. let's focus on the African ones first because it's not going to be very quick. It's going to be very quick. Gambia is just gone within a day. Same as Cape Verde and these guys. Guinea-Bissau. Forces take a longer time in Ghana, but after a special military operation captures Accra, the country will surrender. We don't even need to talk about these two. They're gone within an instant. And now it gets a bit more difficult. However, French forces, they capture that really quickly. They capture Laayoune, and then any kind of government over here surrenders. French Navy is battling out the Spanish and Portuguese, but they are, let's be real, they're majorly superior to these guys. And now French forces enter into Italy. However, the Alps are here, so that's not really where they focus. French forces capture Sardinia, and now they have a straight supply line from Nice through there. Instead of having to go like here and around, they have a nice supply. Also, French naval forces will make a naval landing and capture all of the Balearics forces. Once again, there's more mountains over here, so they'll only enter through the slightly less hilly regions, slightly more hilly and less mountainous regions. So they'll have a few pockets like this. They'll push towards Bilbao. But mainly they're going to focus on getting rid of the African countries first. And let's say the easiest one to get rid of is Libya. So they capture Tripoli really easily. Forces push along the coast. It's quite easy. Benghazi falls. Tobruk falls. Derna, anything else over here. And that's most of the actual populated cities. A small militant group comes up here to capture this little city over here. Fezzan, I think. And then same over here. They capture any other cities. And Libya falls. Now French forces are able to fully enter into Algeria. We got the big brush on because it's quite realistic. So yeah, they'll enter into Morocco. However, they reach the Atlas Mountains, so they slow down there. However, this allows for relocation of troops into Algeria. And I know this looks like a lot, but they wouldn't have full 100% military control of this area. Because of course, insurgents and things like that exist, right? French forces will push along the coast. However, it's much harder at the coast. Basically, this is where everyone lives. Over this line. This is where everyone lives. And maybe a little bit in here and whatnot. Couple small things. But most people live above this line. You find an Algerian. If you ever meet an Algerian, if they're from below this line, they're unique, right? Just like, how would you explain it? You meet a Turkish person that isn't from Istanbul. Or Ankara, or Izmir, or a Turkish person that isn't from this region. It's quite hard. Or if you find an Egyptian not from Cairo or Alexandria, that is difficult. Like this region. If they're not from here, then it's like, where else are you from? In that red circle. Okay. Alright. Yeah. Forces enter into the north. They encircle and capture Constantine. And something like this. They start to push along. They land and capture Mostaganem and Oran. It's not good for Algeria. However, they are receiving support from a lot of Western allies. Which is slowing down the front. And they're even able to kick the French out of over here. Great military victory. And they're able to push back and create a solid front over here. French forces, though, make a landing in Valencia, capture the city, and one in Almeria, and I think you know what's going to happen. They also make a landing in Gibraltar, and guess who they brought in the war? Great Britain, where I am from. Yes, it's so lovely to bring my own country into this war. It fills me with a sense of pride and evaluation. Don't know what I'm saying anymore, right? French forces will capture the Channel Islands. They waited to do that for ages. They captured Gibraltar. They land in northern Morocco. Capture any Spanish weird villagettes or something. Forces now push into Algeria. French forces, let's say they're going to get buffed as... Okay, maybe not. They're going to enter in... They're buffed, so they have more chance to win. Forces push in, capture Marrakesh, which allows for this part of the region to country surrender. Forces also encircle Casablanca and about to push into Morocco. Casablanca falls. Fez falls, and it's not good. Algeria is got more chance than Morocco. They're stronger, but it's not that much. Not by much. Forces start to close in on Algiers. Small military landings are made on either side, which eventually capture all the surrounding roads. That I'm imagining they have ring roads here. Forces push in and they capture Algiers after about a month of a siege. French forces create a big front along the Spanish coast, capture Catalonia. It's not looking good. Once they capture Bilbao and they've got a nice front, from Zaragoza they push all the way down and reach Madrid. And then they also make a naval landing in Galicia. They also make a landing in Portugal, which definitely brings them into the war. Portugal surrenders. This is not good, as now the Spanish have another front to worry about. And then from there, they push in, capture Toledo, and Madrid falls. Boom, boom. Now, finally, the last obstacles. Italy and the UK. French forces enter into southern Italy, capture Sicily. They slowly push along on the southern Italian coast, but I know there's just a big mountain that goes through here, so I'm not stupid. So it's not going to go very long. It's going to go quite slowly. However, they push along the coast and capture Naples. They also push along here. They find a breakthrough in here. But for now, they hold a defensive front. Forces then move to the United Kingdom. Not a good idea, but okay. They land in Cornwall, capture Plymouth, and then they reach Bristol, and a massive wall is there, so they have no chance of going any forward. They also try and make a landing in Kent. However, the UK completely repels that, and they even push and capture Plymouth again, and they even kick them out. The French have failed. However, they decide to focus on Italy, whom they capture Vatican City and Rome, and they capture San Marino. Forces break the mountains, and they capture Milan. And now, along the coast, Italian forces start to surrender. After a bunch of city hopping, Italy surrenders. What a surprise. Italy has surrendered again. Yes, French forces will try to land in the UK again, and they fail. So they meet with the UK to discuss the peace treaty. And in the peace treaty, what they're going to do is, we'll do it on camera here. French forces will annex all of this from Spain to get something like that. They'll also get all these islands here. And they'll also get Andorra. They will get Sicily, Sardinia from Italy. They'll get all of Western Lombardy, all up to Milan. They'll get all of this. French forces will also get Calabria. French forces will completely annex all of these and get all the Canary and Azores Islands for holiday. Right? French forces don't really take much else from Spain and Portugal. They also annex all of these guys. And in Libya, they annex all the oil fields. Kind of a good way to cripple a country that's already crippled. They take all of this, basically. And there you go. If you like this scenario, make sure to like and subscribe. See you soon, guys. Bye.